What did you do while you were there initially? Television, movie work, or?
Well, when I first got to LA, I kind of, to be honest with you, was sorry, my little dog is in my lap, so if you see this, that's what's happening.
That's Bruno.
That's Bruno. Yeah.
Hello, Bruno.
Um, so when I first got to LA, and I think my story was very similar to a lot of New Yorkers who had had success in New York and went to LA expecting one thing and was met with a very different scenario. The industry works completely differently, and theater is looked at very differently than it is in New York. So I had a hard time kind of finding my niche when I first got there. The first year or so was spent me going back and forth to New York and working and doing a little bit of auditioning in LA, but I was a little bit of a kicking and screaming mess when I first got there because I didn't really understand the culture or the industry. So I went back to my comfort zone a lot. I did a lot of back and forth. It was when I did a production of White Christmas in San Francisco. It was cast out of New York, and I did a production in San Francisco of the show White Christmas, and I just knew that if I was going to be in LA, I had to be in LA. So I decided to sign up for an improv class, which is something that I had never done before, and it was with the Upright Citizens Brigade, and it was my very first class. And as soon as that show ended in San Francisco, I came back, and within a week I was in this class. And it was there that I met the future cast of Goodnight Burbank, the web series.
Yeah, you were. We were going to get into that. You're an early adopter of the web series format.
Yes.
So that's who you met. Who did you meet in that class?
So in that class was Hayden Black, Jamie Denbo, myself, a guy named Jeff Venables, Angela Espinoza. There were a few other members that were kind of short-lived with Goodnight Burbank. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I'm missing that was kind of, a long-term member of the team. I think that's it. Yeah. And so what happened is that Hayden had been writing for quite some time, and Jeff Venables was working at a production studio. And at one point, they just came up to me and they said, hey, we have this idea for a thing. Hayden had written a pilot for a half-hour long, I believe, sitcom years ago that had been a brainchild of his because of his dad, who used to watch the news, and no matter how ludicrous the news was, I think it was like local Florida news.
Oh, okay.
And however ludicrous that news was or how sensationalized or made up, his father believed every single thing, and just the lunacy of some of our local news stations, and it tickled all of us because even in New York there's this fantastic local news called New York One, and they're just a little off. Everything about them is a little off, and they're my favorite to watch because everything is a little like, you never know when their chair is going to break and everybody's just going to fall down. They're fantastic. So
that's what he was looking to capture with Goodnight Burbank, was that?
Yeah, exactly. So he said, and we want to do this thing. There are these web series things happening. And we were like, okay. And he said, I'm interested in you playing a role. We're kind of fleshing out what the roles are. Jeff had access to a green screen studio. And Jamie Denbo, who was actually our teacher at UCB, was going to be the original co-anchor. And she was the original co-anchor.
Yeah, and then she replaced Shuli.
Or Shuli replaced Jamie, actually.
Okay.
Right.
So they flipped that way.
Exactly. So our first episode that we shot was in this studio, and nobody knew exactly what was going to happen, to the point of, I think Jamie wasn't even sure if she was going to be able to make the shoot. So I got a call from Hayden about an hour before we were to get there, and he said, bring news anchor clothing because you might be doing the co-anchor. I have no idea what's going to happen. And we were just kind of like, it's very much of a, we're putting on a show. So yeah, that was the very first episode.